Hi, my name is Phil DiCollegiero, and I'm the Executive Director of the Amesbury Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us today as part of our regular Economic Development Committee's Speaker Series, where we try to connect local agencies, community groups, and businesses with one another so that they better understand the resources available as they try to drive their own success and our local economy's success. Today we're joined by the president of Northern Essex Community College, Lane Glenn, for a program that's made possible in partnership with the North Shore Realty Group, Energy Source, and Newburyport Bank. We're joined today by one of our committee members from Newburyport Bank, Bob Jones, to give a brief welcome.
Hi, I'm Bob Jones, and I serve as Vice President of Commercial Lending within Newburyport Bank. Thank you to the Amesbury Chamber of Commerce and its Economic Development Committee for creating these regular forums to educate our businesses, the public on different initiatives, resources, and developments in the business community. At the Newburyport Bank, we are proud to be a sponsor of this program and help make this information accessible to all. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. And so this morning's program, we're actually being joined by an Amesbury resident, as well as the president of Northern Essex Community College, Lane Glenn. Lane, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Phil. I love speaking to chambers of commerce, particularly when they're right here in my town. It's good to be back again, so I appreciate it. I have some slides to share with you, although this does not have to be terribly formal. You know, as we go along here, anytime at all, if you've got some questions or things you want me to stop and pause on, please let me know. I'm happy to do that. We can go in lots of different directions. Just as we were getting started this morning, somebody was asking, are you getting back on campus? How are you working out with vaccinations and students and all that? And we can certainly talk about some of those things. And because I know that certainly the business of the Chamber of Commerce is business, I thought it might help if I began with some thoughts on sort of where we are as a college, where we are in workforce development, a year into this pandemic. And one thing I will mention, and some of you know this, I write a lot about higher education. I write a lot about business and commerce and things in the Merrimack Valley and regionally through my blog. Some of you may get that. If not, you're welcome to check it out on the website or just let me know and I'll make sure and add you to the list if you're interested in this kind of thing. So, a year ago, a lot of us were told we've got to go work remotely, and people had different reactions to that, right? Some people were pretty eager. Others maybe balked at that a little bit. We miss company. We miss each other. Some of us do anyway. So let me just try this real quick here. Drop into the chat box how you're feeling this morning. I'm curious to know. Use an emoji, use a word, use a phrase, whatever. Just tell me how you're feeling today. Let's see how this plays out here. Doesn't have to be long. Barbara's hopeful. Yay, Barbara. Yeah. Phil's still in bed. All right. Yes. Motivated. And as hopeful as we all certainly may be and want to sound, excited to interact with people, Bob says, one of the Bob says, as excited and hopeful as we all may sound at some level, we're probably a bit anxious too, and we're probably a bit frustrated by things. And, we know that we want to reopen our families, reopen our lives, reopen our businesses, all of that. One more exercise of thinking back here. Think way back to a year ago today, right? March 4th, 2020, a year ago today, when it comes to your businesses or the businesses that you work with, right? What were some of the headaches? What were some of the challenges when it came to talent development, right? Think back to hiring and talent development before COVID, before all of this landed on us. What was on your mind? What were the big challenges that businesses in our community were facing a year ago today? No big challenges. Everyone was perfect. We were all fine. We were sailing right along. Drop that into the chat if you can. What were you thinking about a year ago? Bob O'Brien, I know that you've got lots of companies at CI Works, and they had a number of different kinds of headaches. Yeah, growing the business. How do you find people? Think back to what unemployment was like a year ago, right? It was challenging, difficult to find the talent and keep the talent. People getting lured away to other businesses. Well, just before the pandemic, National Survey of Human Resource Professionals revealed something not terribly surprising, and a couple of you were dropping this into the chat, right? Recruiting talent, that's the big one for a lot of sectors anyway, of the economy. And then, as Bob said, retaining that talent. Once you've got them on board, how do you hang on to them? And how do you develop them, within your organization? Leadership development, technical expertise, that conundrum, what happens if I train them and they leave versus, well, what happens if I don't train them and they stay, right? The development of that talent. We were seeing record low unemployment rates way back in 2019, and they got even lower, right? All-time lows, decades had gone by. And something really interesting occurred in terms of job openings and the number of people available to fill those job openings. For the first time in a very long time, those lines crossed over. And there were fewer people unemployed than there were positions open and available, which created big headaches for attracting that talent. This is what it looked like in Amesbury a year ago, one of the lowest unemployment rates in the Merrimack Valley, 2.7%. And then, of course, COVID struck, we went into lockdown. Our rate, like rates everywhere, spiked up to 16% in May. And now we've settled back down, 5.5, which is obviously still higher than it was, but historically speaking, still pretty low. And some of those headaches in terms of attracting talent and retaining talent are still very real, right? So the pandemic, the end may be in sight here, light at the end of the tunnel. What do you suppose some of the biggest headaches are now? I won't even ask you to try that. I think we know, right? We can add one to the list. Some of the same headaches are with us: recruiting talent, retaining talent, developing talent, and now, of course, managing remote talent. From a technical perspective, as I said when I came on here this morning, at any moment, I might disappear from this screen. My Comcast internet access is being a little wonky with me, so I'm working off of a hotspot. How many workers that you have been doing the same thing, or having to go to a coffee shop, or maybe stopping by the office and sort of rotating hotel space? It's a different landscape for managing remote talent, right? As a college, we've always been in the business of workforce development. Whatever our students might be pursuing, whether it's a non-credit class or a credit certificate or degree, at the end of that, more often than not, they're looking for a job, they're looking for a career. And so in order to do that effectively, we try to make everything that we offer as affordable as possible, as accessible as possible, flexible and customizable for employers that we work with in lots of different ways. And we recognize that people don't always know a lot about what we do. So here's an opportunity for you to weigh in. Little pop quiz for you this morning. Community colleges educate a majority of workers in all of these professions except for which one? Drop your answer in the chat, please. A, B, C, or D. Nurses and healthcare workers, police and law enforcement workers, firefighters and EMTs, or teachers. You didn't know you were going to have to work this morning, did you? You thought you could just log on, sip your coffee, watch, disappear for a minute. You got to work today. What do you think? A, B, C, or D? We got an A, we got a C, we got a B. If you're somebody who did test prep, when you're not sure, say C, right? All right. Well, Phil nailed it, and the others are fine guesses. I will say, community colleges educate 85% of first responders around the country. So police, firefighters, EMTs, and about a third of our graduates every year are in healthcare professions. Now, many of those go on to bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, but community colleges all over the place educate a lot of healthcare providers. We also educate a lot of teachers, but of course, the issue there is the teachers have to go on for a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, so they're not done when they're done with us. Those other fields, you can often get jobs and careers right out of a community college. So about half of the country's teachers start at a community college and then transfer. So, among our degree and certificate programs, we've got dozens, and we've got lots of on-ramps. One of the more popular ones, gaining a lot of popularity over the last few years, is early college, and Amesbury is a very strong participant in our early college programs. Amesbury, Haverhill, Lawrence, Methuen, some of the other districts we work with, where students, including my two daughters who have attended Amesbury High School, take classes with us while they're high school students and get a head start on college. Certainly before the pandemic, about 20% of our classes were online. For the past year, that's been more like 90%. And when we finish with the pandemic, we will have more classes online than we did before and more opportunities for people to take those classes. To help adult learners get a jump start on certificates and degrees, we offer prior learning assessments. So if you've got some experience from a career, from the military, speak another language, you've got some skills you can demonstrate, we can offer you ways to get credit for those experiences toward degrees and certificates. And we offer classes that are what we call competency based. So instead of saying, well, you have to spend 16 weeks in the class in order to get your credit, maybe you spend 7 or 8 weeks and you show us what you know, and you can move through a little bit faster. And of course, once the pandemic is over, classes on campus. And we have what we call communiversity partners, 4-year universities that offer classes on our campuses so that students can finish bachelor's degrees with us, right? And for all of these ways of taking classes, we offer degrees and certificates, certainly in STEM fields, in the sciences, computer science, engineering, very popular engineering program for students who want to move on to UMass Lowell, for example. As I said earlier, about 1/3 of our students are in healthcare programs, nursing, medical technology and medical assistants, radiology, billing and coding, respiratory therapists, polysomnography, sleep tech, all kinds of different programs that we have. That picture there, if you haven't seen it, is our El Hefney Health and Technology Center, $27 million facility we built in downtown Lawrence, specifically to train people in these healthcare fields. If you go into a hospital or an outpatient center, pretty much anywhere in the Merrimack Valley, chances are pretty good that the first 2 or 3 people that you see, from the receptionist through the medical assistant who takes your vitals, probably through the nurse, maybe even the nurse practitioner that you visit with, had their educational start at Northern Essex Community College. And yes, lots of different options in business, accounting, business management, hospitality, and professions, education, human services. We now have the second largest police academy in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and certainly one of the more popular. Dozens of police departments all around the state send cadets to our academy, including the Amesbury Police Department. The Amesbury chief is one of 5 chiefs that help us manage this program, and we're very proud of that. All right, another question for you here. Each of these statements about community colleges is true, except which one? They're open admission. Most of them are within 30 miles of their students. It's harder to graduate from a 4-year college after attending a community college, or classes are challenging. So drop your answer in the chat. Which one of these is not true? What do you think? Couple of C's, an A, couple of A's. All right, let me relieve the mystery. We are indeed open admission. And what I mean by that is we accept nearly everyone. If you look at our catalog, it will tell you that the only requirements are that you are 16 years old and have a high school diploma or GED. And in fact, neither of those things are actually true. We have a lot of 14 and 15-year-old high school students who haven't graduated high school yet, taking dual enrollment classes with us. So we are open admission in that we meet everybody where they are. We'll let you in and then help you get to where you want to go one way or the other. Most community colleges are very nearby. Actually, about 90% of our students live within 5 miles of one of our 2 campuses, either the one in Lawrence or the one in Haverhill. And classes indeed are challenging. C is the answer here. And in fact, Marty Meehan, who's the president of the University of Massachusetts system, all of their campuses, and used to be the chancellor at UMass Lowell, is fond of saying in his public speeches that the students that go to UMass from the community colleges, including Northern Essex, are more likely to graduate from the University of Massachusetts than the students who start there. And that's true. Statistically speaking, the students who finish their degrees with us and then transfer graduate at a higher rate. So indeed, it's we give folks a leg up and for less cost while we're at it. So from a business owner's perspective, those are our degrees and certificate programs. From a business owner's perspective, we also do a lot of customized training.
Nothing.
Angela, you may want to mute yourself. We're hearing some conversation.
You guys say?
No.
All right. So I know Alex had a chance to speak with you a few weeks ago, and he may have mentioned some of this. We like to provide training for employers in whatever way is useful for them. And that could be on a work site, could be online, could be on one of our campuses, really any time of day or night. And especially important with workforce training fund support, right? Some of the things that we've done recently include ESL, English language instruction, for a few different employers, Bradford and Bigelow, Cedars, Joseph's. We've had a long-standing program with Raytheon that we offer on-site in Tewksbury at their location in electronic equipment technology. They send a couple dozen people at a time through the program. It qualifies them for promotions within Raytheon. Recently, we put together a special management training package of courses for Pentucket Bank. Called it University of Pentucket. It was going to be Pentucket University, but they didn't want it to be known as PU. So we changed it to the University of Pentucket, and quite successful there. Sales training for Jackson Lumber, some business writing skills for Lawrence General Hospital. So you sort of see the breadth of things that we're able to put together for businesses. And one of the advantages that private businesses have in Massachusetts is they pay a bit into the Workforce Training Fund, and as a result, they can get some funding out of that, right? All different sized businesses can get up to $250,000 in training funds. There are different ways to access this. For smaller businesses, the Express program, if you've got fewer than 100 employees, you can access up to $30,000 or $3,000 per employee. There's consortia training available. So maybe you've got just a few employees, but you're in an industry where there are other employers who you can partner with and go after some training funds. These are some of the grants that we've worked on in the not too distant past that we've helped businesses put together to access those training funds. Alex, who's on the line here this morning, can help with that if you or anybody you know is interested. All right, one more. I think this is the last one. If not, maybe there's one after this, but what do you think? Community colleges enroll a large number of A, low-income students, B, minority students, C, first-generation students, or D, all of the above. You might find this one easy. I'm not fooling anybody with this one, right? Yeah, all the above. So maybe not surprisingly, because we are local, because we are open admission, our ambition is to help as many people as we can, right? I started my my college experience as a community college student at a community college in Oklahoma. First in my family to go to college. We didn't have a lot of money, didn't have a lot of knowledge about how to attend college. And it was a real leg up for me, as it is for a lot of our students. Especially those without a lot of resources, right? Certainly community colleges educate a larger proportion of students of color and of first generation students than any other sector of higher education. And we're very proud of that. We also educate a larger proportion of veterans, students with learning disabilities, lots of other categories of people who we aim to help. Some of those non-credit areas, besides employer customized training that we have available to us, are our community education programs. Anybody can take these. They're offered on the weekends, sometimes in the evenings. Now, of course, online, remotely. Margaret Glenn, who who is usually on these calls, but like me has been experiencing some internet challenges this morning, is responsible for these programs at Northern Essex. And they include things like this: the business skills and professional development courses, accounting, lean manufacturing, grant management, stuff like that. Computer skills, right? Personal computer skills. A lot of folks who are small business owners, one-person operations, come and learn various computer applications with us, QuickBooks especially, things like that. Occupational training. We've got a number of non-credit courses in photography, in automation. Our certified nursing assistant program is a popular one, because certainly a lot of hospitals and healthcare organizations that need entry-level CNAs access that training. And I hope you get a chance to visit this sometime soon. This is the Heights in downtown Haverhill, right along the river. Lapoli Companies built this. It's got residences on many of the floors. A restaurant is being built on the first floor, a fabulous 10th floor sky bar. And in the middle, Northern Essex Community College operates a couple of floors with a new hospitality and culinary arts program, where we have both community education courses, or will have when we're able to start offering them again, to couples who want to learn how to cook together, small business entrepreneurs, launching culinary operations out of their kitchen and need some additional space, and people who aspire to be chefs and want a certificate or a degree to help them get there. So we're excited about that. There's one more. This is the last question, I think, for your quiz. We'll see who scored the highest at the end, and maybe have some kind of special prize for you. Last year, more than what percentage of the people in the country who completed a bachelor's degree had attended a community college? 50, 35, 25, or 10? What do you think? So 35 is a good safe guess. You're right, and then some. So for several years now, since about 2012, actually, just over half of the people in America who are finishing bachelor's degrees have taken classes at community colleges. So really nearly half the undergraduates in the country at any one time are enrolled at a community college, and then many of them transfer and finish their bachelor's degrees after getting their start there. So the last thing I'll mention that we like to help companies with, and it's one of those headaches that you described you had before the pandemic, and certainly one of the ones that we may find as we emerge from the pandemic, is talent recruitment. And one of the ways that we're helping with that is an online platform called Handshake. You can access this through our website. It's a portfolio of online career services that's free. It's free to our students, it's free to our alumni, and it's free to employers. You can go out and create your own account. You can share opportunities about internships, about open positions. Nonprofits can share volunteer opportunities there. You can look at resumes, applicant profiles, and we have recruitment events that are held through Handshake as well. Northern Essex led an effort across the state for all of the community colleges, all 15 in the state of Massachusetts, to adopt this platform so that employers everywhere could access this. Happy to help connect you to that. Alex, who's on the line here, can make sure you're connected. You can find it on our website. Free, simple to sign up for, and if you have any challenges with it at all, you're free to let us know. Let me see here. Oh, all right. Got a technical glitch. 1 second. All right. Uh-oh. There we go. Right. Sorry about that. There we are. Okay. The internship program is something that we've really been working to expand. We know it's good for our students. We know it's good for employers. Certainly, when an employer can see the quality of someone's work and their knowledge as a gauge for whether to hire them, it's a great opportunity for the employer, and for the intern, a good opportunity to gain some experience. So if this is something that your organization or one that you work with might be interested in, we'd certainly love to hear about that and put you in touch with one another. All right. So happy to answer any questions about any of that stuff. And let me just throw a few other things out here that might be on your mind that I'm glad to talk about if you're interested. Yes, reopening plans. We never actually closed, but if you're curious to hear what Northern Essex and other colleges are doing about the fall, I'd be happy to talk about that. If you're interested in college affordability and what you or people you know can do, what is this about free college? What is this about student loan forgiveness? Any of those topics. I write about that stuff frequently. I know it's on a lot of people's minds. Any of those things or any of the items that I just shared with you, happy to answer questions about.
Hey, my big question for you is you've been there for just about a decade. And I feel like looking at other community colleges around the state, like this is really a gem in the Merrimack Valley that we have Northern Essex. And I think that you stand out for the innovativeness. But you've been there for a decade. How has it changed since you first started in the mission and the direction you've moved as an institution in ways that you hadn't anticipated?
Well, first of all, thank you, Phil, for the kind words for me and the college. And you're right about the innovation. So I've actually been at Northern Essex 15 years now, because for 5 years I was a vice president before becoming president. So I arrived in 2006. And when I arrived, one of the things that always felt really comfortable for me is it's a college that is that embraces change. And it seems it's in its DNA. It's always been a place like that. Most human organizations resist change. That's how we are as people, right? We like things to stay the way they are. Northern Essex has always been a place that likes to innovate. In terms of how it has changed in the time that I've been there, certainly the growth of our Lawrence campus is enormous. And it's important for Amesbury because, as I showed you that building, right? That building, the El Hefney Health and Technology Center, is where a large number of health professionals in the entire northeast part of Massachusetts gets their training, right? So that building is now 7 years old. It's a new feature of that campus. And the growth of the campus itself has meant a lot more opportunity for the regional workforce. There are people in Lawrence and around Lawrence who commute out of that city to go to work in businesses in Amesbury and Newburyport and everywhere else. So that's been huge. Definitely, the technology that is available to us and that we've been forced to shift more toward during the pandemic has opened up a lot more opportunities for students. When I arrived in 2006, we were just launching our first fully online degree program. And now coming out of this pandemic, we'll have more than a dozen available. That's big and that's important for a lot of people. Not everybody likes to learn that way. Not everybody likes to teach that way. Many people do, and it can be a great benefit, right? The other big challenge for us, and this is true of public colleges and universities all over the country, and it's one of the reasons that expenses to students have climbed, is where our funding comes from. Well, let me ask you, how much of our budget do you think comes from the state of Massachusetts? We're a public community college, right? What proportion of our budget do you, and by the way, I'm not going to ask you for money when I'm done with this. So don't worry about it. This is not a fundraising plea. This is just a knowledge thing. What proportion of our budget do you think comes from Massachusetts? Anybody, just toss it out there. Oh, we're using the chat. Oh, I thought you were going to talk to. All right, that's fine. So Bob says 33. We've got a 60%. Any other guesses? Who thinks it's 100%? All right, you know better than that because we do charge tuition, right? So it's pretty common for folks to think that most of the budget comes from the state, right? We're a public college. Bob is pretty spot on, about a third, right? 25, maybe a little closer to 30 years ago, it was 85%, right? All around the country. We've shifted the burden of those costs to students, right? We've decided that, college degrees are more of a private good than a public good. And as a result, student loan debts are up, all those things. I will say most community college students don't take out student loans. Only about 20% of our students take out loans. And when they do, the average debt when they're finished is about $6,000. We'd rather they not have to take out any, but they don't tend to incur a whole lot of debt. But, Phil, in terms of what has changed over the years, the divide between sort of the selective institutions with a lot more resources, and community colleges, whose mission really is to make sure that everyone has an access to higher education. That divide has grown wider. Right? So it's one of the reasons that I'm as passionate about what I do as I am. And I appreciate opportunities like this, right, to share what we do with all of you.
Lane, I know you had mentioned just real briefly about, student loans and whatnot. And, you hear in the news that some of the administrations are thinking about giving up to $50,000 to these kids that have graduated from college that have all this mounting debt. And, I can tell you as an older guy, looking at this, thinking, I went to school, I had debt when I got out, I paid my debt off. What about everyone with mortgages? Are you going to give $50,000 to everyone with a mortgage? Where does it stop? And so if you could help me understand how I can reasonably, agree with all this money going to these kids. I mean, this is the third multi-trillion-dollar package that they've given out to the people of the United States. And we're all going to have to pay for that. That just, you just don't print the money. We're all going to have to pay for it somehow. And then to add another $50,000 per kid, which I know it wouldn't ultimately be that, but you're talking, trillions of dollars again, or billions of dollars. And, help me understand why that's okay.
I won't do that because I don't think it is okay, Matt.
Okay.
So let me take a different approach to answering your question. First of all, it's not going to happen, right? President Biden has already said no $50,000. He's not going to go there. He's expressed a willingness to maybe go to 10. Let's set aside the amount for just a minute and talk about the concept, right? I understand what you've just said and why you and a lot of others don't want to see something like that happen, right? You paid your dues, you paid your way. I did the same thing, right? Now, one difference between when you and I went to college and now, I did get my start at a community college. And the reason was I was going to go ROTC. My father was a career Marine. It's the life that I knew. I was ready to become an officer in the Marine Corps. That's where I was headed. And a local bank came through with a scholarship for me to a community college. I wanted to study journalism. I didn't want to actually be a Marine, but that's what I was going to do, right? A local bank came through with a scholarship for me, and it paid full tuition for me to go to what at the time was called Oscar Rose Junior College in Midwest City, Oklahoma. How much do you think the scholarship was worth for a year? Full tuition.
$400.
That's a remarkably good guess. I've never had anybody get so close. How did you do that? Most people say $5,000 or $10,000 or something like that, because that's what we're used to hearing, right? $300. $300. This was 1985. All right. The tuition and fees at Northern Essex Community College now, and we're one of the in the middle of the pack for the community colleges in the state anyway. It's about $7,000 a year. All right. Now, we don't have some of the things that you hear about, lazy rivers and fancy food and extravagant dorms. It's not because we've built up these opulent campuses. It's because of what I said earlier, right? Where the public isn't supporting public institutions the way they used to. College isn't free for anybody, so the cost has to come from somewhere. So in other words, we've shifted the cost over to the students, right? Where the taxpayers used to help pay it, now the students have to pay it. At the community college level, it's not as much of a burden. As I said, most of our students don't take out loans. If students go on to a bachelor's degree, whether it's at a public university or certainly the privates that tend to be really expensive, right? $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 is not unusual. Then that debt burden follows the student. Now, that's a choice, right? You make a choice to go to one of those institutions, and you have other choices to make. The community college can help that be more affordable. But one argument, Matt, to be made for relieving some student debt is, well, 30, 40 years ago, people didn't have to pay as much. Now they have to pay a lot more. We as a society have kind of shifted that burden. Maybe we should think differently about that. Now, one-time forgiveness of debt is not going to solve that problem. If you waived $50,000 of student debt, Maybe you've done that for this generation, but it's going to get racked up again in the future. The more important thing is to figure out, how to alleviate the cost to students if we want to do that, right? If you as employers think that it's valuable to have a workforce that comes to you prepared, what are you willing to invest in that? Either in direct investment to train people yourselves, or indirect investment, right, through taxes that go to universities and colleges. I don't know what the perfect answer here is. It's not $50,000 in debt forgiveness. I don't agree with that. Many of my colleague presidents don't agree with that. It's the wrong motivator. It doesn't solve the structural problem. 10,000, I don't know, maybe if that stimulates the economy and if there's a way to help, get to that structural issue. But, those are some of the drivers, if that helps, Matt, right? There's one other thing I want to say about the debt piece. You hear sometimes about, students or graduates with, $100,000 loans working at Starbucks. Maybe there are two of those people. There aren't very many. And I mean that. If you look at the statistics, first of all, when you hear about, the average student loan debt, that's the average student loan debt for people who have taken out loans, not the average student loan debt for all graduates. That's a big difference, right? The people with the six-figure debts are mostly people who have finished medical school, law school, graduate studies, professions. They're earning money, they're repaying those debts. The default rate for people with those debts is much lower than the default rate for people with debts under $10,000, right? So people with those higher debts tend to be repaying them. People with the lower debts are the ones who are maybe stuck in jobs, haven't finished their degrees. They're having a more difficult time repaying the debts. So what happens in the newspapers and the media around this issue gets reversed sometimes, right? We're concentrating on the people who went to elite selective universities and are probably in good jobs repaying their debts. Some aren't, I get that, but it's a small proportion. The bigger problem is at the other end. Hope that helps.
Yeah, absolutely it did. Thank you.
Yeah. Bob O'Brien, how can I help CI Works this morning?
Lane, what is reopening going to look like? I think everybody's just kind of reaching and assuming, and you keep hearing both sides of it. And I mean, that's really the lifeblood of what people are going to have to cope with. And, we even have a couple of teachers here that are tutoring kids, and, they're asking me the same question, how should they be preparing?
Sure. So for us, I wrote a piece on my blog just a couple of days ago about, what reopening means for community colleges. And you read the same news I do, so you hear about the push to get K-12, particularly the elementary and middle schools, back in person next month, right? That's the current drive here in Massachusetts. Commissioner Riley is, looking to get a special authority to ensure that happens. And that's, driven by what we think we know about the science, that COVID doesn't seem to spread as much among children, that in elementary schools and middle schools, you're safer for those reopenings. Setting aside the teacher union issues and, how you feel about that, that's the direction that elementary and middle schools seem to be headed. As you get into the older populations, as we know, the calculation changes, right? The infection rate changes, the physical distancing changes. So at the elementary level, we're hearing 3 feet is fine. Adults, it's still 6 feet. And then throw into the mix, President Biden announced a couple of days ago, he anticipates we'll have vaccines for every adult who wants one by the end of May. Well, that's a hopeful sign, right? We should be able to reopen everything by the time the fall rolls around. For community colleges, we're more like your businesses than we are like either K-12 or a residential university campus. The University of Massachusetts a couple of weeks ago had a huge spike in COVID cases. And the chancellor there pretty much grounded all the students. He said, stay in your dorms for 2 weeks. You can't go to class. You can't go to work. If you come out, you're in trouble, right? We can't do that. Some of you might be our students. I'm not going to tell. How could I possibly tell you that, right? I can't ground you. We're not the younger set that isn't going out to jobs every day, right? Our students are raising families, going to work, all that stuff. So when we think about reopening, and I put it in quotes like that because we've actually been offering classes on campus continuously since last March. We never completely stopped. We've had a few days where we've had to close because of an infection in a class or something like that, but we've had in-person offerings, and some of us have been going to campus, on and off since last March. We're talking about, opening more. And my hope is that, half or more of our classes will be in person in the fall. That's not because I'm hesitant based on what I'm hearing about the science and our ability to take precautions. It's more driven by our students, right? We've been surveying our students, we've been talking to our students, and what they're telling us is, hey, some of us really like this online stuff, and that's how we want to stay. It fits our lifestyle. We work, we raise families, online is great. More of them are saying we want a combination. We want to come to class an hour a week and do the rest of it online. Or we want to do this, right? We don't want to do it online where we don't see anybody. We want what we call synchronous learning. We want to get on a Zoom call and we want to see our teacher and our other classmates, but we want to do it from home. So the package of things that we're opening up for the fall is a combination of those. Some in person on the campus, some online, some hybrid combination of online and in person, and some like this. And as our students tell us we want more of one thing or the other, that's where we're going to go. And I think that's what you're going to hear from most of the community colleges. Universities are different because many of them, frankly, are in the hotel business these days. And you might know that, right? University of Massachusetts announced that they have a $335 million deficit this year. $235 million of that is in dorm revenue and food. The biggest part of their losses are because they're not hoteling their students. We don't have hotels, so that we're not driven that way. We have a different calculation. Thanks for asking.
Lane, one of the things that Alex kind of spoke about this the last time he came to visit, and I wanted to ask is, for consortiums, you gave examples with Pentucket Bank, you gave, an example with Jackson Lumber, and then you mentioned how some smaller businesses kind of pool together and try to target a topic where they may have small groups of employees at each of those places, but all of those businesses want those employees to learn the same things. Have you ever had some type of partnership with landlords or property owners? We're in the Merrimack Valley. We have a lot of neat things happening at former mill spaces. Some of those visionaries are on this call. Have they ever been partners or engaged to see how they could be the catalyst for these types of programs to help engage some of their smaller businesses, right? Because a lot of these mills have very small entrepreneurs in there. Has that been a model that you've pursued before, or?
It's certainly been one we've talked about, including with Bob here in CI Works and a couple in Lawrence. I can't think of a consortium that came together that way that actually wrote a workforce training fund grant yet. It's certainly possible. One of the challenges might be that Bob's got Bearwolf Brewery, he's got a canoe maker, he's got 7 or 8 other different disparate kinds of businesses that may not have enough in common to do that. However, there's all sorts of different types of training out there. Maybe they all need QuickBooks training. Maybe they all need English as a second language training. Maybe they all need leadership training. We do have an example. It's not all in the same mill, but I think 5 years ago we wrote a grant for workforce training funds for the college to be the recipient of the funding, and then to create a mid-level management program that any type of business could access from the city of Lawrence. So you could be small, medium-sized, have a couple managers that you wanted to send to this program. And we built it that way. So there wasn't one mill, but it was several different types of businesses that were sending people to it. But Alex here would be, and we have others on staff, would be glad to sit with a group of people and brainstorm and talk about what their needs might be and come up with something.
Well, Lane, if you just saying a few words to that effect. Phil, this is kind of we've been trying to do or we've been talking about doing something like this for a while. And I think it's just definitely a major strategic priority for our team to make sure that smaller companies have access to the same great resources that their larger counterparts do. And in doing so, they can also have a better in classroom dynamic, by learning from people with other companies as well that have the same pain points that they do. And so this is something that we're definitely going to be pushing, especially with the availability of workforce training grants. We see it as a real opportunity for local firms.
I was going to say, I chuckled because Angela Cleveland, who's our city's Community and Economic Development Director, leads a committee that I sit on, and we were sitting on it yesterday. And she had posed the question of what were businesses looking to learn? What are ways that they want to be trained? And I was reflecting on it, and I was thinking about all these different conversations we have with a lot of our local business owners, because a lot of them are makers. Their talent isn't that they own a business per se. They've got the entrepreneurial drive, though. It's that, they know, I'm going to use the examples you've used. They know how to make canoes really well, right? They're great with their hands, or they're artists, but it's not that they're coming into this with MBAs. So the foundation for the actual business operation piece isn't always there. And that tends to be something then that as a result sucks more of their time and distracts them from doing what it is that they love. So it was just something I was inspired to think about over the past 24 hours, really, by Angie. And that was one that it just seems like it's a question that you guys may be able to really answer. So
yeah, happy to pitch in there. And Angie's one of my favorite people. Has been for a long time.
Oh,
There you are.
and same to you. I'm a little under the weather, so that's why you're not seeing me today. But I didn't want to miss your presentation. And I did want to say, it's interesting that I should have mentioned this yesterday, but I'll mention it today. That a really powerful thing that I heard recently about running a business is it takes understanding financial management of the money part, and understands making, which is whatever trade you're in, and you need to understand marketing. And not one person really does all three of those really well. And so how can we find out where those missing links are with some of those businesses and provide the essential training to do that? And so that's where I want to understand, like, where are the missing pieces in that in Amesbury? Or there, the making seems to be there. So how can we fill those other gaps? And we're going to start a new training called Money Smart with the Institution for Savings. And we're hoping to be able to fill some of those gaps with that training, which will be like a 7-part series of everything from time management to savings to if you haven't started a business, is this the right fit for you? So hopefully that will help fill the gaps and get people at the front end of making mistakes or hopefully not having to shutter because they haven't filled those gaps.
Great. Well, I hope this has been helpful. I do live here in the community. I do work across communities here in the Lower Merrimack Valley. Please, consider me, the college, Alex, Margaret, everybody a resource to you. Call on us anytime. Phil, Angie, others, if you're looking to attract businesses into the community and you want somebody at the table to have that conversation about workforce training, one of us would be glad to show up. In terms of retaining that talent and developing that talent, if there are things we can put together that would be useful to you, we'd love to be a part of that. So just let us know. I mean, we're here with you.
thank you, Lane, and for being a resource to everyone, and to Alex and to Margaret for joining us.
A wonderful presentation, very informative, really terrific.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
You for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lane.
And thank you to Newburyport Bank, Energy Source, and the North Shore Realty Group for helping make this program possible. You can log on to www.amesburychamber.com to check out this video and more. If you're watching this on social media, check out our Economic Development Speaker Series to look at other past programs we've done. And otherwise, we hope you're part of our partnership in Amesbury to help drive this economy out of this kind of COVID nightmare. So thank you, and thank you again to the staff from Northern Essex Community College for joining us.